I'm Jim Benson, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how to save your lingual journey. Um, there really isn't any lean anymore. There really isn't any agile anymore. There's just all of us trying to get by in this crazy world. Move over here to the more structured board. Um, and just to let you know how these things work, I literally was just putting this ticket up here as we were entering the call because I realized that I had forgotten to put something in here. So really quickly, who am I and what are we going to talk about today? So the quick intro for me that was already given is, I guess, more or less sufficient. I've been around Agile since it was invented. I'm a senior faculty at the Lean Enterprise Institute. Tony Ann and I are also faculty at the Deming Institute, and we tend to focus on not just the psychology of work, but the actual human impact of work, which frustrates us frequently because work is frequently inhumane, which led to this book here, which my editor would kill me if I didn't show on the screen. The collaboration equation. I went to bed one night and was a 21-year-old punk rocker running around Denver, Colorado, and I woke up one day after that and somehow became a 58-year-old process consultant that had worked with every major company on earth. And it is a crazy, crazy journey to get from that original state to my current state. And so those stories are in the collaboration equation. So what I found was human beings, when they got together to do stuff, did it better when they did it together. It's just that simple. And unfortunately, Lean and Agile give us both the tools to do this and the structures to completely undermine it. So our lean journeys and our agile journeys tend to fail when our rhetoric extends beyond our actual practices. And both lean and agile in their foundations provide tools for failure. So the structure for in agile specifically, the structure of the Agile Manifesto is entirely set up as a failure state. You can't have individuals interact without processes and tools. Processes are how you and I have agreed to interact, and tools are how we engage in that interaction. You can't have one over the other. It's like having, I prefer top of sandwich over bottom of sandwich because you can always flip the sandwich over just to torture the analogy. So another thing about me is I'm going to say things that are going to be heretical. On the Modus Institute, which is our online community where we talk about these things globally with people every day. There's a section in there called the Agile Heretic, which is 20-some videos that I made about 8 years ago, kind of talking about the patterns and the anti-patterns around how Agile and Lean are rolled out. So I am kind of a heretic. If you go to modusinstitute.com or modusinstitute.net, you can join there for free. There are a lot of people on the call right now that I'm seeing come in who are from the community. We have really great conversations around lean and agile and behavioral economics and complexity science and anything else you can think of that helps work be more humane. So we love Agile, we love Lean, we love all these things, and we also don't worship them. We employ them like we should. So this talk is going to be unique. And why is this talk unique? Why don't I give the same talk every over and over and over again? Because I wrote this book and I should just be talking about the book. It's because I firmly believe that when you're going to perform in any way, shape, or form, that you should always be improving. You should always be adjusting your message, your product, your way of working, your methods of collaboration. So this talk has never been given before, and it won't be given again, to the point that this ticket itself I just created an hour ago and put it up there. So I've never even said that before. Case in point. So how to save your lean agile journey. Lean and Agile love to tell people that they inform and create cultures of continuous improvement. Bullshit. They do not. They do not do that. They've never done that, and they never will do that, because you can't create a culture of continuous improvement with tools as your forefront. And no matter how much Lean or Agile claim that they don't, Lean always leads with A3s. It leads with huddles. It leads with and-done chords. It leads with potion connery. Agile leads with 2-week iterations and set ways of having your stand-up meetings and story points and user stories and so forth. We lead with tools every single time. And we assume that when we do that, that people will just magically soak up those tools and go, oh, I should be something else. But every Agile team I've run into has one failure state that is, it's not universal, but it's universal enough that I can say it's universal. And that's that if you have if you walk into any Agile team and they've set up a Scrum board that they're trying desperately not to call a Kanban, or they've set up a Kanban, and you see that there's a couple of columns in there. So they got their backlog, and they've got like the stuff that the coders are doing. And then there's another column maybe, and then there's a column with tons of stuff in it. That tons of stuff is almost always like 99.7% the testers. And if you say to the developers, hey, developers, maybe you should stop coding. They're like, well, I can't do that. I've got my sprint goals. You're like, your sprint goals right now aren't being realized because there is a stuck in testing. They're like, yeah, but it was done for me. And like, wow, fail. Big monster fail right there. So I see that over and over again. And I also see, like, literally and repeatedly developers refusing to test because they're not a tester. Like there's some vaunted object of worship or something, which GPT-4 is showing them very quickly that they're not. So the day of the manic typist being highly compensated is quickly coming to an end, and we're going to have to get a handle on that by creating actual humane working environments that recognize that we're responsible for the entire life cycle of the software. And if anybody says DevOps team to me again, I will likely go apoplectic. DevOps team in and of itself is an anti-pattern, but we won't get into that right now. So what we want are those cultures of continuous improvement where we can see all the work. And then when you see that there's a bottleneck, people are like, I, as a professional, must jump into action to help relieve this bottleneck in any way that I can. Because the bottleneck is what is important. You're not. I mean, you as a human are super important. But you as a jerk are not. So we want to make sure that the humans across the value stream are protected by helping out, get rid of these bottlenecks. And this is why 9 times out of 10, Agile and Lean fail. They reward, or we reward, through inappropriately interpreting the rules of both Lean and Agile, or through the structure of our companies. We end up fostering micro silos of locally optimized groups that have an incredibly unoptimized whole. And we think that since our team is so cool that we've got a good culture, but if you have a good team and then you're running into all of these horrible dependencies, you have a crappy culture. So in our Lean Agile Visual Management Program, which is a mouthful if there ever was one, we have a series of lenses that we look at work through. We don't need to make you huge. So I'm going to make these bigger so you can read them better. There are 5 of them. And here's why we have these. We have these because in a few moments, I'm going to show you specific activities to engage in to help create better culture. The danger that you run into is that you think of those like you think right now of story points or A3s, which is that they're the thing to do. They're not the thing to do, they're a thing to do, or they're things to do in the service of these 5 lenses. So here's what happens. You come into any group that is dysfunctional, which is every group has some dysfunction. And you start looking for that group in things like what is your velocity, or what is your cycle time, or what is your throughput. And what you're going to find is that you haven't treated the people enough like machines. And then you're going to try and optimize them like machines, and then things are going to get better for a little while, and then they're going to get a whole lot worse. Because things are going to get better because you've been able to squeeze more blood out of the stone, you haven't fixed any root causes, and then people quit. There's your agile journey. Yay. So what we want to do initially is come in and we want to say, all right, how are the people in this group how do they know what to do and when? So the collaboration equation book starts with a story by a guy named, or about a guy named Kevin at Turner Construction. And Kevin was a young guy in a field that was entirely managed by old guys. He was a young black guy in a field entirely managed by old white guys. And he was in charge of taking literally billions of dollars and spending it over the course of a couple of months. So you're building a huge skyscraper. He's the guy that went out and spent all the money. So he would hire all of the contractors. He would buy all the toilet paper rolls. He would buy all the signing, everything in a couple of months. The opportunity for him to get into trouble was more than any of us could imagine. So we set up this room for him, and this Obeya room, which had all these visualizations. And what they did was they triggered everyone in the company of when they needed to help Kevin, regardless of their station. Senior vice presidents were now responding to the board because they needed to respond to the work that was flowing through Kevin. And so Kevin shows up in this meeting one time with a bunch of HR people. They ask him, is this helping your quality of, or your work-life balance? And he's like, I work in construction. I'll always work long hours. That's just the way it is. But he said, when the stuff is on this board, he's like, Charlie knows when to act, and Paul knows when to act, and blah, 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 blah knows when to act. And he says, and I know that when I'm doing something and there's a problem that needs to be solved, but I can solve it myself, they know about it. I don't have to have a meeting about it. It's on the board. It's on the wall. It's in the A3, whatever the tool was that was relevant. But we know what to do and when. And he said, that helps me act with confidence. And I was standing there in that room, and it's like 7:00 at night. I'm really hungry. I want to get out of that room. And he said that, and it was just like, first of all, it was like Christmas, because as consultants, you never get clients to like really get it. So that was awesome. But then the second thing was, it was like a real punch in the gut, because the words were just so profound. What Kevin was saying was, most of the time, no one can act with confidence. So we all run around and we're talking about, oh, you need agency, or, oh, you need psychological safety. But we're not giving people the information that they need when they need it. We're not giving people information that they need when they need it in a way that tells them when to act to help others. Right? So when people have that information and they can see the work that's going on, and they know when they can help, not, I'm a coder and I'm not going to help you when I can obviously see something's wrong, but it's now expected that Senior Vice President Charlie Murphy is going to help entry-level Kevin Chase get this work done. That is where respect comes from. So Lean talks about respect for people. Agile has all this lip service for respect, but we haven't built this system to get that done, right? When you have these three things, then these two things, the two things that we spend all of our time looking at, the downstream elements of culture, right? The things that right now every Lean and Agile journey is working on too late are flow and PDSA. So once you have people who know what to do, how to do it, and when to help, then you get both workflow and psychological flow. Wicked. And then when you have that, then you can actually do PDSA. So when Lean comes in and says, we're going to start with PDSA, it's literally like starting with dessert. It's starting by getting your PhD and then working your way backwards. We haven't done the basic work in order to get to these important things. I can't believe that I'm 58 years old. I still get this worked up about this stuff. There's some, I can't tell if this is geeky or if I'm just what the deal is, but I've got a problem. So the collaboration equation is individuals in teams create value. Yes, it is an equation. Stop writing me saying it's not an equation. I can draw it as, in fact, I have a footnote in there that shows you like 12 different ways that you can write up this equation. So what happens is we as professionals gather in groups, we have a goal, and then we usually ineptly strike out to finish that goal. The reason that it's inept is because we don't set up systems to get the information that we need and when we need it in order to act with confidence. Period. Agile failing, Lean failing, don't care which. Not here to crap on anybody's, picnic. Here definitely to plead with people to do the work up front to make sure that your project is successful. And hopefully by learning a little bit about this, we can figure out how to go back and do some work retroactively. So when we do this, we don't want canned processes, okay? We want to use the tools that we know to make our own rules, all right? I started my software company with a pre-publication version of XP Explained, all right? I've been doing this a really, really painfully long time, okay? Even back then, we understood that some work fit into 2-week iterations and some didn't. That some clients required more of a touch than a 2-week iteration. And you know how we learned that? By getting punched in the face by a client that needed more than a 2-week iteration. And it hurt. It hurt bad. We had this horrible meeting with this client where we're like, this is so awesome. Every 2 weeks, everything's running great. And then we got in the middle of one of the weeks and the client freaks out and comes and just lays into our whole team. And the whole team doesn't know what to say because the client's screaming and yelling. And we're all thinking, we're already doing this. We told you about it in the sprint planning meeting or the iteration planning meeting. And we're going to show it to you in a week when we get to our demo. This client, for a variety of reasons, was incredibly scared. Their fear had to become part of our process because they needed this communication faster than we were delivering it, even if we were delivering it faster than at that point, 1997, anyone had ever delivered it before in human history. Okay. We needed to do better in order to make that relationship happen so we could maintain the respect to finish the work. And I'll tell you what, like that after that call, the whole group of us got together and we bitched about the client like you couldn't believe. We went out and had dinner and bitched about the client. I went to bed bitching about the client, and I woke up at 3:00 in the morning and said, shit, I'm the asshole. This was a cry for help from somebody who needed help, and I have to respond to that. Okay, so make your own rules. Nothing is sacred. You know, if we want to go totally crazy, go back to Aleister Crowley. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Everything you do has repercussions. Make sure that you understand the system that you're working in and respond appropriately to the will of that system. Okay. Hierarchy schemes. And yes, that's probably the only time you're going to hear Aleister Crowley in an Agile talk. Okay. So Agile has, and Lean has to a lesser extent, Lean is more hierarchic than Agile. So Lean tends to be a little more top down. Agile tends to be a little bit more bottom up. But both of them have strict hierarchies that drive me batty. Okay. So Agile was based entirely on the premise that we should kill all the managers, very Shakespearean. And then the first thing that we did was we went out and invented our own managers that looked suspiciously like the ones before, just like Orwell said we would do. So enough bashing managers, enough saying these people are giving us all of this direction and blah, 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 blah. Build the system that the work requires. The reason that managers are coming to you and asking you for work that doesn't fit your plans is because right now your plans don't match the work that the company thinks it needs to do. The structure of the company is messing with you, and it's making your team protect itself, which is another Agile anti-pattern. Protected teams are death. Okay? You have to be part of the company. If someone in your group ever says, just tell me what to do, you'll know that they are suffering from not having enough information. And so they're asking for just enough information to make them get by. What they're not going to do is say, I want to be an active part of this company. And I've had all sorts of people fight with me, say, I don't want that. I don't want that. I just want to code. I just want to code. Oh, please let me code. I got to type. And you're like, no, sweetie, you don't want to type. And I saw this in spades during COVID, because in COVID, what happened was once everybody went home, they're like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I guess I never did. And so then they started asking, can I be part of the planning process? Can I understand the why of what I'm building? Can I stop having these brain dead user stories that were treating me like I was 8 years old or like I was a crafts person? Okay. Soapbox number 500 for Jim. Software crafts people build 737s that crash into oceans. Software professionals do not. So let's move on to the next one after that happy statement. All right. So we don't want anarchy theme schemes or liberation theologies. Agile was like I said, kill all the managers. But what we do want, we want kind of the REM B-52s kind of thing here with the shiny, happy people holding hands. We want pragmatic people pleasantly participating. We don't want happy, slappy, backfall kind of things. We want actual pragmatic systems that allow professionals to do what professionals do best, which is work. Okay. We're really psyched to make a happy office. Well, I'll tell you that anyone in this room right now, all of us, say, what was your most favorite working moment? It was when something horrible happened and everybody got together and they solved the horrible thing. It was work. It wasn't the best part of my job was going on vacation. And if it is, you got the wrong job. The best part of your work is work. And we got to get out of the way and let pragmatic people pleasantly participate. That is the only tortured alliteration I will give you. So coming up to the end here, what do we need to create? Okay, so what we call this is a right environment. A right environment is the precursor and the foundation for Lean or Agile. The right environment is an environment in which professionals have the information and the ability to act with confidence. Okay. The right environment is defined by the people doing the work in relation to the work itself. The work has demands, the people have demands. You put those two things together and you say, what's the best way for us to get our work done? I guarantee you, it will always include some sort of time boxing. It will always include some sort of Kanban. It will always include a stand-up meeting or a huddle. So don't worry, I'm not blowing up your paradigm. I'm merely giving the paradigm a raison d'etre, which currently it doesn't. The only reason for Agile or Lean to exist right now is to pay people like Olaf Lewitz and me. And that's not good enough. And at 58 years old, I'm tired of it. So I'm not name dropping. This is just a thing. It was like a big moment for me. So I've worked a lot in Lean, and in Lean, the Jeff Sutherland of Lean is a guy named John Shook, except he's not crazy. And I work a lot with John Shook. I love him to death. And he and I were sitting in Nashville at one point, and we're sitting and we're eating lunch, and he says, you know, I don't feel like I've really been successful. This is like, it's like having lunch with Lenny Kravitz and having him say, "Can you show me how to play the guitar?" It was like a big moment where I was like, "Oh my God, like this is a thing. This is a thing for everyone. There are no gods here." So any right environment that we create, any foundation that we create, has to be, as the kids say now, fit for purpose. And fit for purpose means that we actually have to have something that underwrites the social contract of how we work. And the social contract has to exist, and it can't come out of a canvas. It has to come out of us. All right. So these people here, I got to bring them to front. I use this picture all the time. This is my favorite picture in the whole world. This is at the now called Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hospital in Brooklyn. This is in a trailer outside of the building while it's still being built. This is the Obeya. It is a room where all of these people come to see everything that is happening on the project at the same time. As you might guess, a $1 billion project has some simultaneous work going on. It has multiple teams, but they all have to operate as one team or people get killed. Okay? And they get killed immediately. So this is like real. So there's a couple of things that are happening here. One is we've got this room and it's set up with all these different visualizations. We can all see that there's a Kanban over here. So that's kind of cool. That's the procurement process. Over here, there's a work that's going to be happening over the next 6 months in different phases. Up here is a timeline with milestones for the entire project. Yes, Virginia, planning exists. And back here are pictures, like literal pictures of the foundations, the footings that were going into the ground at that time. And then next to those were A3s or problems that we were running into with that. Here is safety. Here's a little PDCA thing. And then I'll show you some stuff that was back here in a minute. On the ground, on the table here, we have the physical plans for the building and a 3D model of the building. Anyone that comes in this room, regardless of what they're working on, whether they're the owner, whether they're a tradesperson, whether they're the plumbing super or the ornamental metals super or the structural steel superintendent or whatever, all of those people see everything that's going on. The reason that this group is gathered here today is because we had a problem where in 1/4 of that land, the geological engineer, the hydraulic analysis of the hydrology analysis of the land ended up being wrong. Not surprising. We're a couple of blocks from the ocean, and the reason that this is building is being built is because the other hospital was flooded during Superstorm Sandy. So we get to a corner of the lot, go in to sink a couple of these footings, and we hit water. The liquefaction there is terrible. So the gentleman who is off screen, who was the engineer for this, comes into this meeting, and he's got boxes and briefcases, and he is ready for a deposition. He's ready to go to battle because he knows he's going to get sued, because that's what happens in construction. We get in here, and Chris, he starts going, I did this, and I swear, blah, 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 blah. And Chris just looks at him and says, "We're here today to solve the problem, not to sue you." And this guy who is like 62 years old, like, looks at him, and you can tell that he's going through like the 7 stages right there. he's like, "You're lying to me. I'm going to burst into tears. I'm going to start laughing. I'm going to." He could not believe that we were there to solve the problems, but we did that because this group, this is like, at the moment on the screen, here's probably half of the team that was out there. So, she's ornamental metals, he's woodworking and so forth, but they're in there to help solve the problem. Okay. This group has a dog, because when we went through their right environment exercises and said, "What do you all need in order to do a good job?" People were like, "You know what, if you're going to make me drive an hour and a half to get to the farthest reaches of Brooklyn every day, I need a dog." So they got a dog. Tons of stories about this. And I have just 10 more minutes to finish this up. So I'm going to put this over here. But one of the things that happened here, so I still do want to use this button, because Agile tends to undervalue this to our detriment. We have standard work. We love to say that we're special and that everything we do is emergent and everything's complex and blah, 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 blah. But even in complexity, you can have standard work. You have standard responses to certain stimuli. So in this case, there was an event happening on site that was going to stop production, and that was not tolerable. This is a public hospital that needed to be completed on time so that it could save people's lives. Okay. It wasn't because somebody was bitching and whining about a deadline. It was because people would die if we didn't meet this deadline, like literally. So this group had standard work that said, when a complex problem arises, we will gather and we will go through a set series of things to deal with that complexity. But it also had an expectation that when someone noticed complexity, they were honest, forthright, and immediately reporting. We didn't say, "Oh, this is up, and boy, this is going to really make Rick mad. I'm going to hide this for a while, or I'm going to try and solve it myself, or maybe it's not that bad, or perhaps if we're quiet, it will go away." When the thing came up, they responded because they had that social contract, and they had this room with the physical stuff to respond to it. And through that, they created actual humane work. So how do we build our right environment? So in the book and in the Lean Agile Visual Management class, we talk a lot about this. So I'm going to give this to you now in literally less than 10 minutes. So I'm telling you right now, you are getting the taste of it. Please experiment with the ideas, but recognize that that's what you're doing. So this is some deep stuff, and I don't want to say like here's the gun, now don't use it, but but here we go. So a couple of things. I'm going to show you a real one rather than show you all of the canned ones that I have in this thing for expediency. So the first thing that we do is we get the group together for a week. This used to be called the weaker. And everybody said weaker sounds like you're saying that it makes you weaker. So we changed it to the right environment exercise, which people said was too many words, to which I said, stop telling me to rename things. So here we have this group. This is a real live one that we really did. So you can see it's divided out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like all falsely certain, which is what everybody likes. Here's what happens. First thing we do is we get together and we need to learn about what we do. So we do two things. Excuse me. We do two things. The first thing we do is we get together and we do what the kids call an icebreaker. And I made a video about this a couple of weeks ago. Most icebreakers are things like, what's 3 things people don't know about you? Or, how many times have you fallen down the stairs? Or, why do you like Dawkins? That type of thing. But those are terrible icebreakers, and they're terrible icebreakers because they give us the illusion of thinking that we've grown to meet each other, and they've put us no closer to any shared goal. So what happens is we put people in one headspace in the icebreaker and then immediately take them out of that headspace. So no, an icebreaker should be something that actually gets people to emote in a way that is helpful for the future of the event. So we tend to start with something similar to this. What interrupts you or stops you from completing your work? And we encourage people to be as silly as they possibly can. Now, this is a small group of people, so there's a small group of Post-it notes, which is why I selected this. But for most of your teams, you're going to probably get maybe 250 Post-it notes in this affinity mapping exercise. But what happens then is they get together and they start saying, these things hurt me. And then the rest of the team realizes 2 things. 1, the thing that hurts me also hurts you. And 2, the thing that hurts you, sometimes I'm responsible for. Oh, crap. I'm not an army of one. What do I do now? So we start to see how we're hurting each other. So what happens here is we've done this activity. All of the people use the colored stickies. The black stickies are notes from me and Tony Ann as we've discussed them. So now we're discussing the pain. We're starting from the point where we're saying, you are individuals in this team. In order for the team to operate appropriately, the individuals need to be not heard. People don't want to be heard. People want to participate. They want to act. They feel they want to be heard because they're not being heard. But trust me, the appreciation for just being heard and then ignored is a very, very short duration. So, all right. So we get together, we have these conversations. And then as I'll come to that in a second. Sometimes we'll do like some training in the middle like we did with this group. But usually next what we do is we go into doing a value stream mapping exercise. And you can see that this is messy. And it's messy because work is messy, right? So they have their white and yellow stickies, which are the steps that they always take and the steps that they sometimes take. They've got the pink stickies, which are things that they hate. But more importantly to us, they have these purple stickies, which you can see show up a lot. Well, I guess a lot of them have actually been moved out of here by now. But this is where you need to collaborate better with other people. And when you go through and you read any of these, you will find out that most of the fixes are not in the system. They're in the relationships of the human beings, which are, I would argue, actually the system. So, putting things in a sandbox, doing peer review, doing another review, UAT deployment, blah, 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 blah. Those are the things that we think are the process. But what's actually the process is Jim does a thing. Jim hands that thing off to Sanjeev, who hands that thing off to Dan, who hands that thing off to Karen. Those relationships are the things that are important. It's the space between that makes the design. It's the white space that makes the design. So what happens is when we're going for velocity, when we're going for throughput, we try to eliminate that white space. And if you can eliminate it by automating conversations that people don't need, cool. If you can do that by visualizing conversations people didn't need to have, cool. If you do that by stopping people from talking to each other, not cool. Not cool. So, okay, so we've talked about this now on this Monday. We've done a value stream mapping exercise and an affinity mapping exercise. And what happens every single time is immediately people start fixing things. When you give me this, I don't have enough information to act. Oh, well, I can just give you that information from now on. Great. That's a decision. So we'll drop it into the decisions box. In the future, we should get together with sales before we start to build the software to make sure that we've included the things that sales wants in the software and that they're alerted that we're about to build something that they can sell. Okay. That is an action. Okay. So we have two boxes that float along here, actions, roadmap items. And then we also include one more, which is goals, which I'll zoom in on just to show. But these are more high level things. These are more of our, part of our culture. What culture is it that we want as professionals that help us get our work done? So here, don't take a backseat to our own work. Don't let the product manager, the product owner, or the customer representative or whatever, don't let them come in and tell us what we're building. Let them come in and tell us what needs to be built, and then we work together to figure out how to build it. And no, that's not a user story. That's being involved in the conceptualization and planning of the product itself. Okay, so let's I should do this. Whoop. And whoop. Okay, so these things, these goals and decisions, we grab these and we move them as we go from day to day. And except that one apparently. So we move these from day to day. Why would you be locked? I didn't lock you. I just moved you there this morning. All right. Stupid Miro. All right. I know I have 1 minute, so I'm going to do this incredibly fast. So the next two things that we do, I'm going to zoom out, is we do a team charter where we go through and we do a series of affinity mapping exercises to get people to talk about what they do, how they do it, how they work together. Okay. They're specifically called vision, expectations, collaboration, and then there's another one called victory conditions that this particular group did not do. As they go through that, they have other conversations, and these conversations get very, very detailed. They get very deep. And so what happens here is what we're not doing is we're not having people fill out a form about a community charter or a team charter. We're having people get together and talk about the issues that are important to them, and then figuring out how those issues impact the work that they do. The last bit, which is also supposed to be 4, this group did 2 of them. But this one is saying, what information do you need? What information or communications mechanisms do you use? And usually the teams will go through and they will not mark on here like where that information goes to die. Because we all work in teams that are using, Jira and TFS and 25 other tools, Google Docs and whatnot. And we know that it's Slack, where information goes, it's initially presented, and then it just dies on the vine. So we figure out what tools people actually want to use, what information they actually need, and we create a communications plan that says, this is where information goes, this is how it's updated, this is where you go to look for it. If you need this, go to here, don't go to Slack and ask everybody, because that's another thing. Way back in Monday, when we started this, there was an interruption. Was people constantly asking me for information that we'd already talked about. We put all of this information into a roadmap, and that roadmap becomes something that is actionable, and then they build it. So as you can see in here, I said that this was an extra thing. We didn't do a thing here. We didn't do 2 things here. The system is malleable. The overarching process is not. Get the people to talk to each other, figure out the work they need to do, figure out what they need as professionals, figure out how they need to interact, and you will create the basis of your culture of continuous improvement. Last bit here, just the other day, this is nice and neat, isn't it? This is us at Modus Institute planning how we're going to do our upcoming event series, right? So we have a nice flow of work here. We have all the elements that are going into the flow of work, the information, who's involved and when, what collaborative opportunities there are, et cetera. This is how, sorry to just flash that, but that is the nature of how we work together.